On this episode of the show, I have with me Tony Speller. He is Division SVP of Technical Operations and Engineering at Comcast. We're going to be talking about AI and innovation. We're going to talk about how AI is being used within Comcast, and I think they're using it very differently than a lot of the people. And we'll talk about the internal use cases, build versus buy, some of the results they're seeing. Tony, I really appreciate you spending the time with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here today, Amir.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm sure a lot of people know what Comcast does, but just in case, can you tell us what you guys do?
Yes, we are a global media technology company that provides connectivity to customers through through our broadband platforms, our video services and voice services, and that's both for residential and business.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So this episode around AI and innovation, I guess, Comcast is huge. So before we get too far, I'd love to maybe define your kind of scope of what you see at Comcast before we talk about where AI is within that context.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, obviously, we're a large, connectivity company, and AI is clearly, important to us as a company because it's not only going to help us be able to service our customers today, but it's also going to be able to help us innovate with some of the new products and services that we're going to bring in the future. Comcast is not a stranger to AI. We have been using AI, for some time now. However, we are starting to increase the usage of AI, particularly in a couple different ways that I can share with you here in just a couple minutes.
Absolutely. I guess from your standpoint, when you look at AI, I know, as you mentioned, Comcast has been using it in different ways in the past. Obviously, with the launch of these LLMs, particularly ChatGPT, now maybe 2 years ago, really brought it to the forefront. Has that development changed anything in your kind of universe?
Yeah, I think it has. We've had to look at AI, and I think a couple of different ways. One, I would call the teammate experience in terms of how our people utilize, the people who work for Comcast utilize AI to make their jobs easier, but then also how do you utilize it to make the customer experience better? And I can give you some examples of both ways in terms of how we're doing this. I think back when we first started to launch AI into our operations, we started to do some things like an example. We launched this product, this technology we call Octave. And what Octave was doing is looking out at all of our 50 million plus modems that are sitting out there, devices that are sitting out into the network. And what it's able to do is use like 4,000 different data points and be able to look out at those modems and be able to move those profiles around on the modems to give it the maximum performance around bandwidth efficiency and customer experience in the home. And so when I think about that particular one, that was one that required a lot of manual intervention back in the days to be able to look at the profiles and be able to make sure the modems are sitting within their right profile. I think that one was huge. When I look at things like the customer experience, we're able to do a lot of new things in terms of mitigating events and outages, actually preventing outages. Because one of the technologies I want to mention here is what we call our virtualized CMTS. This used to be our cable, I'll call them our routers for our modems, the traditional cable modem routers. We invented and created our own versions, and we built these what we call virtualized virtualized VCMTSs. And what makes them different is that they use automation There's self-healing within those devices. Those particular devices, they can introduce change in the network, and the change in the network was manual work that we used to have to do to go in and make these manual changes. The reason why this one is so important is that as good as we can be as human beings, is that we don't always get it right when we're when we make a change. And we were looking back here recently is that these particular devices have done over 300,000, changes and upgrades on their own, where we didn't have to have a manual intervention or a customer impact to be able to do these. And then the self-healing capabilities are really amazing because there's 60% of the time we saw an event happen and these virtualized CMTS has basically corrected themselves versus in the old days I would have got the phone call, had one of my people engage, and we'd have been flipping a card or something to get the customer restored. And the great part about this, customer never even knew there was an impact, never even knew there was an event that occurred.
That's fascinating. You know, you made me start thinking about my own experiences with internet providers, and I'm old enough to remember some of what you mentioned, calling and having to kind of go wait online and be, an hour into call and need somebody to come out because they just figured they can't even solve it. And what you just described, where the end customer in this case doesn't even know that they have a problem. I mean, when we look at that, and you were talking about customer satisfaction, it's a bit of the unsung hero. I guess out of curiosity, internally, I'm sure that's celebrated. That's got to be a great metric. Should the customer be made aware of that, of how powerful the network is, or in reality, you know what? They want uptime. They really don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. We've been showcasing, a lot of this technology. We just did it at the recent SCTE event. We did a big show on it. And so we are, talking about all these new technologies for our customers because we want them to know that, hey, we are using automation. Hey, we are using AI to give you that great experience. But also, we want them to know too that when it does break, we're going to get it right. And there is AI technology that we're using for when it breaks also where we do need manual intervention. I'll give you a couple of other examples. These are ones that I'm excited about too, is that on the demand side for our network techs and our technicians in the field, I started myself as a frontline cable installer. I was a network tech, a service tech. I worked my way through the ranks from a frontline tech. I know what that experience is like when you show up, whether it's in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, and you're out there with a meter going from pole to pole, trying to figure out where the outage is or where the event is. We've created technology that will help them and it will make their jobs a lot easier. One of the technologies that I'm most excited about is a technology called ROSI. And ROSI does a couple different things. It utilizes pattern detection to be able to make determinations in the network, what could potentially be broken or where the failure point could be. And one of I was looking at one of the tests that we ran on ROSI, and it was pretty amazing to me, is that, ROSI basically looks out into the network and say, hey, you got an event that's happening, and through pattern detection, instead of driving up and down the street multiple times, it can basically pinpoint that the outage is at the corner of Smith Avenue and First Avenue, and a technician can go there and solve the issue. These are some of the new modern things that we're starting to put out into the markets for our technicians. And then we put it on a lot of our fiber telemetry today, where if we get a break in the network, it'll basically detect and tell us that the fiber break is 25 kilometers from the location that we're sitting at, and then we'll go to that location and find the actual fault. And so there's a lot of exciting things that are really happening around AI. And this is kind of at the beginning. I look at it as almost the beginning stage of really what's to come.
Interesting. I guess just a follow-up question to that. Like, it sounds like the scope of these AI solutions, I mean, they're massive, touching millions of people, and the scope is enormous in terms of the benefits as well. When something like this is being put through development, something like this is actually, obviously use case, POC, all the development, it's not like maybe a SaaS company where they're testing a piece of AI as they're getting it right. There might be a beta. You guys, a beta for you guys doesn't seem to maybe fit. What does that look like from your perspective when a solution like this needs to go live, and with AI, you're counting on it to get it right, because otherwise people are going to make those calls immediately.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, what we do is we have a team that focuses on, there is a dedicated team that really focuses on all the development in our technology center that they focus on all the development, the roadmap around AI, whether it's product, customer experience, or tools that we're deploying. And what we'll typically do is we'll put those through a thorough pilot and testing roadmap before we'll physically put it, live into the network or live into on, to a customer's device. There is a pretty, I would say, it's a pretty robust, disciplined process because, like like all of us, we're anxious to really, hey, let's get this new technology up and going, and we want to move quickly. I think we found the right balance of, hey, let's, really, let's put it through testing in the lab because Comcast, we got pretty sophisticated lab environments where we can put it in the lab, we can simulate what a real, what it would be like in a real, customer's home, and we can do all the testing on it, and we'll get an idea exactly how it will work, and we can put it through, different temperatures and things. So we're pretty robust around that. But sometimes, the fact is, when you put it into the physical new, environment, you are going to learn some things that you didn't learn. And so as we deploy that on the other end and put it in the field, whether it's employees' homes or particularly folks like my home first, and let me go through it and see what that experience is like, we'll go through that before we, physically put it into the customer's home, because some of this, new technology we're putting on our core network as well. And when we're touching things like our core routers and things, we got to get that right because that could be a catastrophic event if we don't get it right out of the gate.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the scope is ginormous, and I think one thing I was going to follow up on is, something like this. And I don't know. Obviously, there's many parts of your AI solutions. You've kind of covered a few different scenarios. Are you guys doing a lot more building internally for this type of technology? Are there solutions that you can purchase that have been models and solutions that have been tuned for specific use cases like yours?
Yeah, I think I would say it's both that's happening. We are building and innovating and doing quite a bit of work of our own. The example I gave you on the virtual CMTS, that's a development that came up through Comcast. That's a development where there's an innovation team that work to really build and manage those. But there's cases where we will look at integration of technologies because a good example is we have some that we're looking at for like advanced routing for our technicians in the field because today we're kind of using the similar platform that we've used for the last 10 years with a little bit of last 10 to 20 years with a little bit of innovation. We're now looking to move our technicians to a more upscaled and advanced routing system in the future. Now we bring in partners from the outside who have different who've already built or experts in certain areas, and we'll integrate our plans together and come out with one powerful solution for that. So yeah, we definitely take advantage of both.
Awesome. In terms of you mentioned, what's in flight. You mentioned the innovation of the exciting things that come out as the technology is maturing and you guys start automating more parts of the network. Realistically, What does a roadmap even look like for something of this magnitude? Or do you guys have it planned out by the years? Is it further out? How far out do you guys look at a roadmap?
Yeah, we're typically looking years out, and there's a couple of areas I think that are super important to us in terms of what that roadmap look like. When I think about the roadmap, I think about, for example, we talked about change on the network, automation to the network. That's a key component to us that we want to be automated. We want to be able to make changes to the network. We want to be virtual on the network. We want to have, virtualized switching capabilities, all of these things that are important to changing, to change and managing, traffic on our network and capacity on our network. That's one of the legs I would say is super important to us. The other one I would say is I would call it around the simplicity to be able to operate the network. And that's really, for our teammates, right? Making sure that the tools and technologies that we're bringing, and we do have a number of tools that our tools roadmap is like really, really long. And it's not just for the techs. It's for our care agents, it's for our sales agents, it's for, pretty much we're pretty much just touching every area of the business with some type of AI. And then I would say the other leg of it is this customer experience, right? The interactions that customers have with us, we want to make sure it's easy, it's simple, it's very easy and it's simple for them to be able to interact with us and be able to self-serve and be able to use our digital platform. So I would say when you look out, further at the roadmap, it's touching all of those things, and it's really going years out.
You first started off talking about the customer, and we talked about obviously some things are behind the scenes that the customer won't even notice. And I think if I'm old enough to know you had cable service and then you also had internet service, and the two necessarily weren't linked because one could be up and the other could still be working. Now with streaming and so many different streaming services, different options, people will feel the internet's loss immediately. And the fact that you guys are able to detect and help actually customers not even have a bump in their favorite streaming show. Does streaming? I mean, I think I might know the answer, but I am curious the impact of streaming that has been made on top of these innovations. Obviously, AI alone is something, but the end customer wanting that level of streaming, that level of uptime, because they are reliant on it, has that kind of spurred innovation on the Comcast side?
It has, because if you look at like some of the most recent events that we've carried on the network, whether it was the NFL, the major primetime games, one of the things that we saw was an all-time high in primetime usage. And when you think about that, that's really a change from what we were dealing with years ago on a set top, when we're just dealing with just the set top box or more QAM, using the, more QAM technology. There's more and more people streaming on the network than ever before, and the amount of bandwidth that's being used, through streaming is just incredible. And so that's required us to have to innovate, and that's why we've done some of these unique things. Like you probably heard us talk about Janus. Have you heard about the launch of Janus? This is our new core network routing system. It's got advanced capabilities, AI capabilities, advanced switching capabilities, the ability to be able to mitigate and manage traffic, failover capabilities in the cloud to prevent an event, and then also bandwidth efficiencies. If you think about the question that you just asked, has it made us change and think about the things that we need to do? Absolutely, because when you see those types of volumes coming in over the network and you see the type of usage that's happening today on the internet, to your point, people will know immediately if something is going wrong, even if it's a glitch in the network. And so that's Linda's that has pushed us to say, hey, looking at those types of volumes is that we got to be in front of it, and we got to make sure we're delivering the best experience to our customers. And so It's made us come in and say, let's put in some of these new capabilities in our network to prevent, events from happening, but also to make sure that we're ready for the next event that's going to occur. Because some of these events, like the large spikes we saw in primetime viewing for NFL, you know what? We didn't necessarily know we would hit that type of capacity, right? But what we were building for a couple of years ago prepared us to take on that capacity when it did did happen.
I love it. I want to ask you a final question because I've been thinking about everything you've said, and we've talked about, you guys are behind the scenes, your teams are behind the scenes. When it comes to the teams you manage, the teams you're responsible for, how do you, as a leader, help celebrate them? Because I guess I said they're unsung heroes. A lot of people that will never know that their internet's up because these technologies are being deployed. You guys are working on these developments. How do you help celebrate them so that they, it's not like you're shipping an app and they can see the feedback on an app store immediately, right? That's not always easy when you're behind the scenes. How do you celebrate them?
Yeah, we bring them together on a regular basis, almost really daily, and we get together every morning. We have what we call an 8 o'clock sync across this division that we do every morning. And we look at every night what has occurred overnight, how many changes we made on the network, how many events happened, how long did it take us to resolve them. And one of the points we've made to do here is to let's celebrate our success every single time, and every time we mitigate something, we're celebrating. Every time there's an event that could have happened that didn't happen, we celebrate those things in a large open forum with hundreds of people every morning. And so, because we want them to recognize that, hey, the work they do every day is important to us, and it's important to the customer. And it's not just even celebrating the ones that, hey, how fast we fix an event. We're spending a lot of time celebrating the ones that we prevented. And so they realize the importance of working upstream from an event, and how that supports the customer experience. And so I would tell you that's one of the big ones for us. And we look at our TMPS and our NPS every day, and I think that motivates them a lot.
All right, that's the end of the show. We'll be back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think Tony walked us through some fantastic innovations that probably most of us are not aware of, but behind the scenes, they're doing things that are making everybody's lives better, especially if you're a Comcast user. But you got to look at this and go, hey, the progress has been fantastic, because a lot of us just never recognize there's downtime. So now we know who to thank when we don't have to experience that. I really enjoyed hearing how he celebrates his team. Sounds like they get together every single day, make sure they're celebrating those wins. That's fantastic to hear. Oh, please share this episode out. I'd really appreciate that. Also, like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to hear from you about the show. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover, let me know. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.